Hello, welcome to Music Recollections. This is our first podcast. I'm your co-host, Brian. And after years of talking about it, my great buddy and I are launching this show. We're very excited about it. We're going to dive into the stories of music lovers and how music has changed their lives. Whether it's through albums, concerts, or unforgettable moments, we're here to explore the soundtrack of your life. So I'm going to pass it over to my co-host, James.
Yeah, B, I'm just so excited to get this started. And we've been talking about this for a while now. And it just seems like we've had some interactions with some music fans at concerts or just our everyday lives. Talk to people who have really great stories and just a really great passion for music. And I know we've always shared a lot of similar taste in music, but it's always interesting to hear from others' experiences as well. But yeah, just super excited. For me, music is just one of those things that it's just really it's transformative. Just thinking about some of the old tastes that I've had throughout the years and that changes. One of those thrills for me is finding that new band that no one's heard of yet and you could share it with others. And it's one of those experiences I think that kind of brings people together. I really appreciate us doing this, and I'm super excited to talk to others and share that passion for music because it really is transformative to me. How about what do you
Oh,
think?
definitely, James. Oh, no, you nailed it. And we go way back. We were back in, this is in the mid 90s. We won't say our age, but we just connected immediately. And one of the things we connected with, of course, was music and also, of course, sports. I would say equally, James, with both music and sports, just having
Yeah,
that
for sure.
passion for both. And we just have been to so many awesome concerts together and shared so many amazing experiences together. And although I'm in Atlanta, you're in the Olympia, Washington area, it's still amazing how we connect and we just immediately connect over music. We hear a song and we're like, man, remember we heard that back in 1995 or whatever.
Yeah.
This is going to be a lot of fun and I'm totally stoked about it. And like I said, even though we're a far distance away, music is what brings us all back together. And especially in today's world, just with we're so divided and we've always talked about music, food, and sports bring people together. So this is going to be a lot of fun, our inaugural episode. So what we're going to do is ask each other about some different experiences with music. So I'll kick it off, James, and ask you, what about your first concert experience?
I was in high school, and at the time, I was living in Central Florida, and there really wasn't too many opportunities to see concerts. It was either Jacksonville or Daytona Beach, and so I lived in between those 2 venues, and seeing a concert was a big deal. So I was dating this girl at the time, and she really liked Richard Marx, and I had never been to a concert before. The venue was in Daytona Beach, and the headliner was REO Speedwagon. So we went and it was interesting, a little embarrassing. There's a lot of great REO Speedwagon fans out there, so I don't really want to offend anyone, but it was good. It was just an interesting experience. I'd never been in an arena before. And I guess REO Speedwagon is now considered classic rock, which is weird, but I always considered them a little popish at the time. Not really my taste in music now, but certainly it was a great first memory from this kid in rural Central Florida, just getting that experience with just a massive amount of people and everyone kind of sharing that experience together. So it was fun, a lot of fun, and it made my girlfriend happy. So it worked out. How about you, man?
That's very cool. How old were you?
Oh man, I think I must have been 16 or something like that. And I always had some back then, my tastes in music were more classic rock, but it was never really REO Speedwagon, but I have a new appreciation for them. And whenever I do hear a song streaming or something like that, it does bring me back to that experience.
That's right. I want to say they're still touring or they were opening up for someone I saw
Yeah.
about a year ago. It's amazing they still have legs, some of these bands.
Yeah. And that's what's the cool thing too, is that a lot of these bands that we grew up with are now trying to tour again. And I never had the opportunity growing up to see these bands that I liked, but now as an older adult, it's fun. Now that opportunity's kinda opened up a little bit. So, yeah, there's a lot of cool concerts out there to see. So, how about you, B? I mean, what was your first concert experience?
Yeah, for me, I've mentioned this to you, James. It's a little embarrassing. It was actually the Jackson 5. So it's funny to think about it, but thinking back on it, it was pretty cool to see Michael, legendary musician.
Oh, yeah.
He was probably like our Elvis during the 80s. And this was probably 1985, I want to say. I was a junior in high school. So I vividly remember my friend calling me and saying, I've got 2 tickets to the Jackson 5. And I'm like, man, I'm not sure if I want to go to that, but
Yeah.
this was around the time that Eddie Van Halen collaborated with Michael Jackson on Beat It. I want to say it
Oh,
was
yeah.
85 or 86. I'm thinking, okay, maybe Eddie will show up. But I remember back then the tickets were, and we thought they were really expensive. I want to say it was $50. And we were thinking, man, that was like $200. We saved up and we went to the concert. It actually ended up being pretty good, but unfortunately, Eddie wasn't there. But the second concert I remembered vividly was going to U2 at the
Oh,
Omni in
wow.
Arena. And that was super cool because that was my favorite band. And this was I was in 11th grade, I remember. I want to say it was Unforgettable Fire Tour.
Oh,
And I
wow.
remember we got the ticket back then. You could buy the tickets at a place called Turtles.
Yeah.
And yeah, even Macy's, you could camp out and buy concert tickets, which was surreal thinking about it. I remember I'm the youngest in my family going to the mall with my mom and like, why are these like teenagers camping out? She said, oh, I think they're here to buy tickets. That was a unique thing. I think that stopped probably in the early 90s, but there was a music store called Turtles, this is way before internet and everything like that. So that was pretty unique. We did camp out for another YouTube concert a few years later. So that's an experience I'll never forget.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I'm sure there's a lot of stories that people have just about waiting in line and passing the time. A lot of these fans would camp out the night before and spend the night in front of the ticket place. And yeah, I'm sure there's gonna be some stories there too that we can hear.
Definitely. And that's what we want to talk to those listeners who went through that experience. Because I remember, of course, playing my friend back then, of course, had the jam box playing Unforgettable Fire. And of course, everyone's playing different U2 albums. I want to say War was before that. I remember War was being played, and
Wow.
that's what was super cool. And unfortunately, teenagers today will never experience that, which is really sad.
Yeah, but oh man, what a cool concert that must have been, B. They were just on the verge of just really exploding and they were just gaining popularity year after year. But man, you got in there a little early because I remember I think I was first introduced to you to my freshman year of college. That was later.
Yeah, a couple
And
years later, you're right. I remember Time Magazine had a cover rock's hottest band, and it was U2, and it had like flames in the background. And I had a cool poster my brother got me at Christmas. I remember I had that hanging up. I think it was either in my room or dorm room, somewhere like that. I would say it was my dorm room. So everyone loved that poster. Of course, this is way before internet. Even buying things like rock posters were a cool thing. You'd have to go to a record store or somewhere. I remember there was a record store called Chapter 3 Records, a independent record store. It was a old rocker type guy, something out of the movies. So I'll never forget going in there and seeing him. And that was cool. This was around the time Guns N' Roses was hot too, because I remember him saying, you got to listen to Guns N' Roses. They're glowing white hot.
oh yeah. Oh yeah.
So I'll never forget that. That was probably like 87 or 88. So then I bought Appetite for Destruction. And man, that was an incredible album. Just hearing Sweet Child of Mine, that opening riff,
Yeah,
it
yeah.
just brings me back, like we were talking, brings it back to high school or college or whenever you heard that song.
For me, music is like a time machine sometimes. You hear these songs, especially if they're not played often, and you think, "Oh, man, the first time I heard this was I was doing this, I was here," and it really just takes me back sometimes, and I love that about music. Y
Absolutely.
were you able to buy any, like, concert T-shirts or any merch or anything like that back then?
Thinking back then, I think the first concert t-shirt I ever bought it was actually John Cougar. And that was maybe about a year later, like freshman in college. I remember seeing it was John Cougar. Then of course he changed it to John Cougar Mellencamp.
Yeah,
I remember having his t-shirt, but that was a cool experience. How about you?
yeah.
What was your first one?
I don't remember ever getting any concert T-shirts, but I just remember, especially in high school, after a big concert, everyone would wear their concert T-shirts the next day, and it was always fun to see, and of course, if you sat behind them, you'd be able to read all the different cities that the band was touring, and yeah, I've always wanted one of those concert T-shirts. It seems like I just never really could afford it after spending all that money on ticket itself, but
No, that's right. Because I remember, like you said, Jane, feel like a late bloomer being in ninth grade and the kid. I remember Van Halen, of course, was huge. And these students were talking about going to see Van Halen and the opening song. I'm like, man, that would be so awesome to do. And just, I'm definitely a late bloomer. What about your music taste? Has it changed, let's say, since high school or college?
oh, for sure. Like I said, I think around high school, I was into more like the classic rock, and for me, classic rock is probably a little bit different definition than some, but Van Halen, and I was a big Journey fan. And then it seems like when I went to college, it was more like college rock and things like that. And I liked The Cure, Depeche Mode, and REM. I was a really big REM fan. I think just thinking about some of the really great albums I can just go back to and listen to anytime. And probably Murmur is one of those. Just classic REM albums are just every song is good. Just being in Athens, Georgia, you almost have to like the B-52s and REM and all those kind of bands. And being in college too just allowed me to talk to others and hear about what their tastes in music are. I love that sharing of interests. I was turned on to a lot of different. We had an independent college radio station and kind of listening to that. And yeah, and then in the '90s, I went with a lot of people who was interested in grunge, and so loved Pearl Jam, Soundgarden, and Alice in Chains. Yeah, I just really appreciate all kind of music because there's so many great artists out there. I don't wanna limit myself to just one thing. So how about you? Has your journey changed a lot since high school, or what do you think?
Man, brother, we're really on the same page with those bands. I would say
Yeah.
for me, in a lot of ways, it stayed the same. You mentioned, U2, The Cure, REM, B-52s, all those awesome bands. But even the classic rock bands like The Who, which I think we saw them together. We've seen so many incredible shows together. We'll have to talk about that in a few minutes. I always wanted to see the Red Hot Chili Peppers. I think we talked about that, but never saw them. I love the classic rock, and I still love that college rock sound. But like we've talked, I guess since we're older, not we're really in tune with the new college rock bands are. But I still like that sound, whether it's on Sirius radio here in the college rock station. But it's interesting. We both went to University of Georgia. We're passionate Bulldogs. We were there at the same time, but we didn't know each other, which is amazing. That we ran into each other, but could have been at the 40 Watt or one of those cool places like that.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah.
Athens is such an incredible place. My brother was there when the B-52s and REM got their start in the early 80s. And he says he remembers Michael Stipe. I think he was an art student and he dressed like an art student and was really like a recluse. And we'd see him around campus and see him with 1,000 people. And so that's cool. But I'm with you, brother, man. I think Murmur and Reckoning are two of my favorite REM albums, but I'd put them up there. It's interesting. They quit really early in their career, but for me, they almost got over creative their last album. So
I agree. When they did that one album where it was just we didn't have a live drummer anymore. Was it Bill Buck?
yeah, that's
Yeah.
right. Barry,
Bill Berry, yeah. After that, I kinda lost a lot of my passion for REM, and they were very arty at that point, and very creative, though. I will say that, one thing is they really didn't make an album that really sounded like each other. They were just really wanting to recreate themselves all the time and just so creative, and so I give them a lot of credit for that. If you look at their history, you can pick out really great songs from each decade that they did, and they really did keep up with the change in times. I give 'em a lot of credit, and they, like, just pieced out at the top too, which was cool because everyone's clamoring to get that band back together, and they've just been pretty adamant about kinda just keeping it as is. Pretty neat. Yeah.
you're right, James. But there was nothing like that sound. They had that unique sound that was just totally different than everyone else. And so the B-52s were so out there and just so different. That's what was incredible about them too. And there's some other great Athens bands. Another one called Pylon and Love Tractor. Love Tractor was more of an instrumental, but those were super unique bands that Athens, Georgia was a very unique place in the early 80s.
Oh my gosh. And how cool was it for us to be there in the kind of later '80s, but still, you could still feel that vibe. I would love to see a concert at the Georgia Theater, and I think it's been remodeled since we were going to school there. It's just such a great venue and a lot of great history within those walls for sure.
Yeah, definitely. It burnt down, I think, within the last 7 or 8 years, but they rebuilt it. So we'll definitely have next time you come down, we have to do that. I know we went to Athens last year for a football weekend, but we definitely have to go to a show there. I think what we did, we saw the Dogs play. They showed the game there when we left early, or we watched the game there. They had the game on the Georgia Theater, but for certain that would be awesome. Someone even told me Kenny Chesney, the country guy, played there a few years ago.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think they have all kinds of different bands, but yeah, Athens is just such an incredible place, and I'm not sure what the music scene is currently, just us being out of there, but I'm sure it's still pretty unique and still pretty good.
Yeah. Kinda like with Seattle too, they had their kinda peak, at least in the '90s, everyone knew the Seattle sound, and Nirvana, of course, was huge, but they still have a great music scene here, but really great bands have come from Seattle, so that's cool to be in that area to see that.
Yeah, definitely. I remember James, we saw that movie Singles with Matt
Oh,
Dillon.
yeah.
That was cool. I think that sort of captured the entire Seattle rock scene in the early
Yeah.
90s. I think Pearl Jam and Soundgarden, Eddie Vedder, they were in the movie.
Yeah, and yeah, that's a great soundtrack too. If you ever get a
Yeah,
chance
oh,
to
it totally is.
yeah.
Yes. And weren't you telling me that you've heard Eddie Vedder's like super down to earth, like people have seen him out in his yard and like he'll wave at people and he just seems like a really cool guy.
Yeah, he does have a house in Seattle, and I've talked to his neighbor, actually, and, she was just saying he's just so generous, sometimes we'll give her pre-release type stuff, and just a really nice guy. Both him and his wife and kids. You picture some of these guys, especially we saw Pearl Jam, and he was at his peak, and I think he was drinking at the time and stuff like that, but these are also kind of family men as well when they're not on the stage. He just has a great reputation in this area as just being a really great guy. And talk about he's just a big promoter of local music and vinyl stores and things like that. He has a great reputation around here.
No, that's super cool. I remember REM, speaking of that, giving back. They were ahead of their time, like on environmental issues and everything. Michael Stipe and Bill Berry, Mike Mills, all those guys always gave back. So I always heard really good things about them. And then, of course, B-52s, I didn't get to see them. If you were down here, James, we would definitely would have gone. But they just played in the new Classic Center a couple months ago, and they named the hockey team the Rock
Oh yeah.
Lobsters, of course, after the Classic Sun. So that's
Yeah.
cool. So it's surreal to think 34 years later, they're coming back and a hockey team's named after them. Who would have
Yeah.
thought that back in
Right.
1982?
There was just the typical party band, and yeah, there was one a great concert that I went to. One for me was just this impromptu concert that the B-52s were playing on University of Georgia campus, and it was right behind my dorm. So I literally just walked like probably 50 feet from my dorm room and saw them play, and it was pretty cool. It was standing room only, and it was just out in the field of grass, but, yeah, really cool concert, and of course, they played all their classic kind of party hits, and a lot of fun.
That's awesome. I heard about that, James. I think I was there, of course. That was around 88 or so. I want to say it was at Legion Field. For some
Yeah.
reason, I think I wasn't there, but I remember hearing about that. And it's interesting. Remember when we were there, REM would play under a Wheel of
Oh, yeah.
Cheese or some different name, and they play like at the 40 watt. One time I saw Peter Buck with some friends. He played with a band called the Normaltown Flyers, so that was cool to see
Yeah,
him up there jamming, but there was rumors Sipe was gonna be there and all those guys, so
yeah.
that was super cool that they did that. What about some of your favorite albums and concerts? You mentioned some albums.
Yeah, gosh, I think artistically, go to Rumors by Fleetwood Mac. That's just a really good album, I think, from track number 1 to the last track. But gosh, there's just so many, it's really hard to choose from. How about you?
Yeah, I'm gonna have to go change with the Joshua Tree. If you could get 3 good songs on an album, then it's considered really good. If you can get 4, it's great. But I'd stay with Joshua Tree. It's 8 or 10, but I'll still have Murmur and Reckoning. I think every song on there I like, because I love Pearl Jam, but some of them, I think sometimes they could get over creative on
Mm.
some of their songs, and you'd have 3 great songs, then some I couldn't get into. But personally for me, but those are some of my favorites.
Yeah, and to me, like, there's just so many different artists right now. Everyone's streaming music, and we get to hear songs. Some of these like concept albums are just really impressive and really cool. I encourage everyone to kind of listen to those, and they do arrange these songs in a particular order for a particular reason. Album itself, you need to listen to every single song in sequential order sometimes, and I think that's lost a little bit today with just streaming. Do people really buy full albums anymore, or is that
Yeah, I
pretty
was gonna
rare?
ask you that, James. Do they even call it an album?
I
Where
don't know.
song aren't
Yeah.
eight? Yeah, it's funny, if I wanna hear a song, I'll usually go on YouTube kind of thing, or I have the Shazam app and I'll just play like a live song on YouTube.
So I think some of that is lost. There's so many great songs that we never really get to hear because the streaming services usually play the hits or things like that. I've always enjoyed listening to those B-side songs, and some of those are just really good. They just never get any airtime.
Yeah, definitely. I remember just cracking open that album. It was so cool. Couldn't wait to play it. But just like opening up and the art, and then they usually have a pull out a booklet. Because I
Oh,
remember
yeah.
vividly growing up, my brother bought Alice Cooper $1 Billion Baby. And it was
Oh, yeah.
so strange. You opened it and this huge poster popped out.
Yeah.
Vividly remember that, or Kiss, some of those albums he had. And I want to say he had the Leonard Skinner album that right before they had kind of that plane crash. And
Oh,
I think it
wow.
was called Street Survivors. And he had that. I think they stopped printing that album cover. So yeah, just the uniqueness of those album covers. And of course, when we were in college, it was CDs. And
Yeah.
that was cool stuff on those. But you're right. Unfortunately, young people will never capture that, or going to the store and buying it and can't wait to listen to it, bringing it home type thing.
Yeah, like Sticky Fingers, that's a classic kinda album cover. So many great ones. Yeah, I mean, they are really considered art, I think, and, yeah, the liner notes, and then especially with REM, you're like, "What is Michael Stipe even saying right here?" Sometimes it would be helpful to have those liner notes. "Oh, okay, so those are the lyrics." I'm sure there's still your hardcore fans that kind of buy albums, if that's what they're called, and listen to all the different songs and things like that. What about concerts, man? What do you think your top 2 concerts are?
Top 2, James, I'm gonna have to put the one that we just last saw, the one with Sammy was
Oh,
incredible when he came
man.
down in July, and that was just awesome. It was just surreal to be there, and the sound and just their energy, and they were having fun. It was him and Michael Anthony. I'm getting goosebumps thinking about it.
Yeah.
Like we were saying, James, I thought the same thing. It brought me back to sitting in my room at home in 1986 in Dunwoody, Georgia, where I grew up, listening to Sammy and Dave and all those guys. So it was really incredible. But man, I think he was 75, Sammy Hagar, but he brought the energy of a 35-year-old.
Oh my gosh, yeah, and his voice is still crystal clear, his range is amazing, and Joe Satriani, if there's anyone on this earth that could get close to Eddie's guitar playing, it's him. It was just spectacular. I was just blown away. Every single song, I was just amazed because some of those, yeah, that guitar playing is so technical, and I was just so amazed that he just picked it up, and yeah, it really brought me back. We were saying that was the music I leaned towards in high school, and yeah, it took me back. I remember in my room in high school, I'd put 1984, the classic Angel Smoking, the album cover of Van Halen, kinda prop that up in my room, and yeah, it just took me back, and the Van Hagar era where, "Oh, You 812," and there were just so many different really cool songs that came from that. Yeah, it just took me back. It was so good, and I hear that they have a Vegas residency, and there's anyone that hasn't seen them, I'd recommend if you just go see them in Vegas. I'm sure they're awesome. Do you know if that's at the Sphere or where is that? Do you know?
That's a good question. I was gonna look that up, man, James. That'd be so much fun if we could go to that. That
Oh,
would be awesome. I assume it probably is, but
yeah.
you never know. It could be in one of these casinos or whatever. Because I think David Lee Roth he had a residency there 4 or 5 years ago. Someone I work with went to see him. But man, getting back to Satriani, that 5150, that song was so
Yeah.
technical, and they left the band. They never touched it because it was so technical. But I'm just getting goosebumps thinking that opening riff. It was just a really great rock show. And like we've talked before, when you're a rocker, man, you just feel it in your chest and your soul. There's just something different about it. You hear that pounding in your
Yeah.
chest kind of thing. It's just unreal. And the sound, man, was so good. It was
Yeah.
at some amphitheater up in Alpharetta.
Yeah. Yeah, who knew? And that's one thing too, when you listen to an album, I'm gonna keep on referring it to that. You hear this live, you do feel it like in your soul, just the drum licks and everything like that. You just feel it. And yeah, it just elevates that whole experience because you've heard these songs before, but when you hear them live, it's just, there's nothing that can replace that. And we have to talk about Jason Bonham too, man. Can you
I was
imagine?
just thinking about that.
Dude,
Yeah.
that was so cool. It really was, like, the best crew to play those songs together. It was just amazing. So,
It
yeah,
was,
I
yeah.
that was a great experience. And plus, part of the concert experience for me too is just going with someone and talking about it and sharing that experience with someone that we've been to so many concerts together and refer back to them every once in a while. If you're with your significant other or a best friend or whatever, it's kind of a bonding experience. And that's just another cool thing about concerts and music.
I'm thinking James too, when we saw, yeah, I think was it Plant Page and was it Bonham's son back then? I want to say that was incredible. And then Pearl Jam, I remember them playing Keep on Rocking the Free World, the cover of Neil Young. That was unbelievable. So
Yeah.
we did so many incredible shows. And I want to say he was someone random like Brian Ferry, who was a
Yeah.
classic songwriter. We saw him at the Fox.
Yeah. No, that was great. That was great. Yeah, for me, I would probably say my top 2 are Plant Page with the symphony orchestra. That was just so cool. Because yeah, you always hear hardcore rock for Led Zeppelin, but when you have a symphony orchestra kinda back that up, it's just another experience altogether, and that was really cool. And then probably, gosh, what would be my number 2? Probably the Rolling Stones. I was never a big fan, but a friend of ours, Mike Hayslip, so shout out to Mike Hayslip, he was working security at this concert and somehow managed to get me in free. And I was like, "Yeah, okay, I'll listen to the Rolling Stones." Of course, I've always heard all their hits and things like that, but to see them live, Mick Jagger is such a great performer. It's just it was good. It was really good. So that was just one of those, just weren't really thinking I was really gonna enjoy it that much, but it's free, and then just being blown away. So, how about
That's
you?
interesting. Yeah, I remember
Anything
you
else?
talking about that, James. I'd have to say also you too with my wife. I want to say it was one of our first dates back in, it was around 2000, and that was incredible. Back then, I guess it was Phillips, now State Farm. But I just remember that being so much fun there being with her. And she had never seen him before and she loved him. And then another one, I went to Music Midtown. Remember those used to be really cool, James.
Oh,
And we had
yeah.
some fun at those. But I remember we snuck up to the 10th row and saw David Lee Roth back. This was probably like 2001. And that was cool. And then with REM, probably my brother, we snuck up to the 10th row at Chastain Park. The energy, James, is unreal when you get up that close to a
Oh,
concert. Man,
man.
somehow we got up there. But yeah, just so many fun shows. I'm thinking with my goddaughter, Kathleen, who just got married, I had the privilege of marrying her and her great husband. We saw Coldplay together. It was 2008, I want to say. And I wasn't really that hip on going because I'm like, oh, Coldplay. But that was just a great sound and just a great time. I wasn't really going through a great time at work. Remember back when we were probation officers and it was a stressful job. And I remember just being such a stress release going to see them. And that was just a lot of fun. So just so many great memories, Dave, we've had. It's really dredging up all these awesome memories.
Yeah, it's so cool, and really that's what we wanna elicit out of other people, and you and I, speaking of that concert, we ran into someone that was talking about the early days of was it Rush that she was talking about?
Yeah, I think it was Rush or Sticks or someone like that.
Yeah. And, yeah, people just have really great stories, and this is the whole purpose of this podcast. This is just the first episode. We just wanted to introduce ourselves to you and share a little bit more about our experiences and why we're here and how passionate we are about music. But we're really the whole goal of this is to hear from others. Brian and I, in future episodes, will reach out to people who have just really great stories, and we want to hear from you, and it doesn't have to be any particular genre of music. I think there's such a wide variety of artists out there. We want to hear from everyone. And the tagline to our music recollection podcast is soundtrack for the fans. And really, that's what we want to hear from is your soundtrack. And so we want to hear from you. And yeah, thanks for listening today. And Brian, man, it's always great to catch up with you. And really look forward to working on this project with you together. And I think we're gonna have a lot of fun and meet a lot of great people and share a lot of stories. Yeah, if you get a chance, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. And we're always looking for bookings for guests. Reach out to us. We have a email, music.recollections@gmail.com. Again, it's music.recollections@gmail.com. I'd love to hear from you. And especially if you're a fan of music, we wanna hear your soundtrack. Yeah, anything else, B, you think you wanna share before we kinda end things today?
This has been amazing, James. This is so much fun. And like you said, we just want to hear from the listeners and we'd love to have you as a guest, especially anyone who went to Woodstock or saw the Beatles or the Who back in the 70s or even the Doors. Those would be really special. But anyone if you've seen Taylor Swift or Beyonce, we'd also love to hear from you and just all kinds of different music. Doesn't have to just be rock. We're obviously rockers, James, but
Yeah.
this has just been so great. I couldn't find a better person to do it with. So we just can't wait to do this. And we thank you all so much. And James, we also, do you want to close it out and talk about, we have a Instagram page.
Yeah, I will include that in the notes here on the YouTube. Please look for that as well. We'll be posting some information about that. We'll also share another way of reaching out to us and trying to get on this podcast. We'd love to hear from you.
Thanks again. Keep on rocking.
All right, keep on rocking. All right, thanks, V. See you.